Now we're going to take a look at the distinction between real versus nominal variables. Nominal variables are measured in monetary units. For example, nominal GDP or the nominal interest rate or the nominal wage. So when we think about our salary, for instance, we get paid in some amount of dollars, and this is a nominal measure. A real variable is measured in physical units of output, so units of GDP. Real GDP is measured in the quantity of things that go into GDP rather than the prices associated with it, rather than any accounting of the price list associated with it. The real interest rate is measured in output, and the real wage is measured in output. So what we need to do sometimes is convert from nominal to real variables by accounting for changes in the price level. The reason this is important, or part of the reason this is important, is because economists are divided sometimes about the effects of the money supply and the effects of inflation on the macroeconomy. And it's useful to do a thought experiment where we think about what happens if the value of your cash and the value of your bank balances had all gone up by 10 times. We add a zero to all of the currency. What do you expect happens? In this case, we haven't become any more productive. We don't have more natural resources. We haven't invented any new technology. And so what you would expect is eventually we would see prices and wages rise by 10 times to reflect this change in the amount of money floating around the economy. The classical economists, so 200 plus years ago, viewed money as neutral and thought that boosting the money supply would affect nominal variables but wouldn't have any effect on real variables. We wouldn't have an effect on real GDP, we wouldn't have an effect on real wages or in relative prices. And most economists generally believe that this is still true in the long run, that in the long run the price level doesn't matter. In the long run what determines our standard of living is productivity. However, we should note that there can be very real effects in the short run. We have business cycles, and monetary policy has been linked to perhaps ways to offset or perhaps causes of the short-run business cycles. What I want to do now is talk about the quantity theory of money, which has been very influential in terms of the way economists think about how money affects prices and output. This is an identity. The quantity equation is an identity. On the left-hand side, we have the money supply and the velocity of money. And the velocity of money refers to how often a dollar gets used over the course of a year. P refers to the price level, and Y refers to real output. And this is just an identity. The right-hand side, you can see, is nominal GDP, the prices times the amount of output we have. The left-hand side is the amount of money times how often it gets used. And since each transaction has a buyer and a seller, the left-hand side has to equal the right-hand side. Now, over time, we think that velocity is generally stable, although lately it's been much slower, and over time money has been much slower. Technological advances in banking, for instance, make it so that we can carry less money around in our pockets and in our checking accounts. What this means, if velocity is stable, is that an increase in the money supply will translate approximately 1-for-1 with an increase in the price level. So if we double the amount of money, we can expect to roughly double prices, holding velocity constant. What's most important for our discussion is that velocity doesn't depend on the amount of money in society, that velocity is determined by other exogenous factors. The government can potentially use inflation as a kind of tax. If we print more money, it acts as a tax since it erodes the value of people's money balances. If I have $100 buried in my mattress and prices rise, that $100 is worth less. So if the government prints money, effectively they're transferring some of the purchasing power of my $100 to them. As we can see, the government prints more money, it drives up prices, and in history we've had cases where governments have tried to pay debts by printing up more money to pay for them. In the most extreme cases, this causes bouts of hyperinflation, which is generally defined as when inflation exceeds 50% per month, or prices double. At 50% a month, prices will double about every 6 weeks. Most recently, in Zimbabwe, a very famous case, prices rose over 7 quadrillion times. This is just an astonishing rate of appreciation in prices and depreciation in the currency that came about because the Zimbabwean government tried to print more and more money to pay for its debts.